All right. Well, it looks like everything is working, so let's go ahead and get started here. Today's webinar is actually going to be on using the Perfect Photo Suite 8.5 for powering your digital workflow. That actually is a new topic for us. Typically, when it comes to working on images in the Perfect Photo Suite, it's about editing. It's about adding special effects or doing retouching. But in Perfect Photo Suite 8.0, you notice that we added a browser. And in version 8.5, we've continued to enhance that browser, and we'll continue to enhance and make that browser better and better in the future. And one of the reasons we do that is we have a lot of customers who use the Perfect Photo Suite by itself. They don't use it along with other workflow tools. They don't use it with Lightroom or Photoshop. They just use it on its own. So we kind of need to give them a way to find and manage their images. So that's something that we're working on. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time this morning to actually show you some of the new features in the Browse module in Perfect Photo Suite 8.5. I've opened it up on my screen here, and you can obviously see it. I'm just looking at some of the sample images that come with the Perfect Photo Suite. I'll give you a quick tour of it, and then I'm going to show you how to actually use it to download images, organize your images, and find the best images. So first, in the upper left-hand corner, there is, excuse me, there is an info pane. And for whatever image you have selected, it'll tell you about what camera it was shot with, the focal length of the lens, the file type it was, all sorts of good information about the image. Below that is the sources section. In sources, it allows you to pick where you want to look for your images. Now, it'll look at any volume that's attached to your computer. So that could be a hard drive in your computer. It could be a USB drive or a memory stick or a memory card plugged into your computer, or it could be a network share. So if you're using a network area storage device or you're on another network, those will show up too. You can also create your own favorites, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a minute. And you can also keep track of your most common cloud-based storage services like Dropbox and Google Drive. For example, if I was to go to and click on Dropbox, it'll show you my Dropbox folder. And inside of that, I can see images that I've uploaded into my camera upload. Or if I click on my iCloud photo stream, it'll show you all the images that are automatically added via my iCloud photo stream. So these are all the pictures I take on my iPhone. They'll automatically show up in here as well. And if you shoot with an Android device, you can do the same thing with Google Drive and have all of your images show up there too. Just make sure I see someone saying they can't see my screen. The screen is sharing. So if you can't see the screen, go ahead and try logging out and logging back in. All right, let's see. The other thing you can do, I mentioned, is create favorites. We include a few common favorites for you, things like your desktop folder. I don't have any pictures on my desktop, so it's not very exciting, but also your extras, or you can create your own favorites. So let's show you how to create a favorite. If you're like me, you probably keep your images in a defined folder structure, and that's what I do. I have a drive called Photos, and inside of that, I have a folder called Personal Images, and in that, I keep all of my images divided up in subfolders based on what they're of. So to create a favorite, all you do is you grab the folder that you want to be your favorite. In this case, on my personal images folder, I just click and I drag it over here into the sources pane. When I do that, you'll see how it adds it as a favorite. When you navigate a favorite, or actually any source, it'll only show you the folders inside of that source. So for example, if I click on my hard drive, my Mac hard drive, the folders pane shows me every folder on my computer. And that makes it pretty difficult to dig down to find what I'm looking for. For example, if I wanted to get to my pictures folder, I would have to go to users and then my user. And then inside of that, I have to go find my pictures folder. So it becomes a very long tree to have to navigate. That's the cool thing about creating a favorite is I can automatically shortcut that folder tree just down the stuff I'm interested in. So I've made one for my personal images. And now let's take a look at the folder tree inside of that. I divided it based on category. This is the way I do it. Everybody has their own way of managing their images. Some people do it by date. Some people do it by client if you're a professional photographer. I like to do it by subject type or genre. I can always search by date, so dates never made sense to me, but I always know what I'm looking for. I don't know when it was photographed, though. You notice I do something a little weird. At the top, I have a folder called Inbox. And that's where I take anything that I've shot recently and I haven't had a chance to edit, goes into my inbox. And then I will go through and clean and organize those. And once I have those set, then they get moved down into the category where they belong. Anything that lives in these lower categories are ones I've already gone through. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you how to download some images and go through that initial culling and editing process before they get moved down with the rest of our images. First thing I need to do is I need to plug in a memory card here. So I'm just going to plug a memory card into the side of my computer. And if you watch, you notice right here in my sources pane, memory card has appeared. There's that memory card I just plugged in. It'll show up automatically. And inside of it, here are the folders until we actually get down to where the images are at. All right, so here's the images from a vacation shoot. Now, keep in mind, I've cut this down to just a few images. Normally, I'd have a couple hundred images in this folder instead. I just cut it down to save us a little bit of time today. And these are raw images. So to download them, just select all. The easy way to select all is just to use the Control A or Command A keyboard shortcut, or you can go to Edit and select all, and that'll select all of them. Then I just go to Edit and Copy, and that's now holding those images kind of in memory. And now I can paste them wherever I want. So now to paste them, I'll go back to my personal images. I'll go into my inbox, and I'm just going to create a new folder to put those in. So I'll just click the new subfolder button, and I'll give it a name. I'm just going to call this vacation. And we'll go into the vacation folder. And now I'll just paste, edit, and paste. And now it's going to copy all of those pictures from that memory card to my computer into that vacation folder inside my inbox. So there we go. There's all those images downloaded safely now. So very simple. I don't have a big complex download dialog that I have to go through. I can just copy and paste the images from the memory card to wherever I want to put them. The next step is to start to sort out those pictures. And the way I like to sort the images at this initial step is based on subfolders as well. I'm very comfortable with the subfolder concept, so I'll just continue to create subfolders for the different shots or locations within my vacation images. So I actually have two different shoots here. I've got everything at the top was shot in Yosemite, and everything in the bottom, just these last handful, were shot at Mono Lake. So let's create a subfolder for each of those. So inside the vacation folder, I'll just click, I'll make a new subfolder, and I'll call one Yosemite, and I'll make another one for Mono Lake. And now it's just a matter of dragging and dropping the images to where they belong. I'll grab the Mono Lake images at the bottom first here, and then I can just drag them into the Mono Lake folder. And I can drag them to the folder here in the preview area or into the folder pane. Either one works. So I'm just going to select those three images, and I'll just drag them over here into Mono Lake. There we go. Let's go back, and now I'm going to grab the rest of the images. They all belong in the Yosemite folder. Oops, sorry about that. I must have clicked on something wrong. Just a second, we'll get back where we were. Back in that vacation folder here. And let's take all of those Yosemite images, and we'll drag them into the Yosemite folder. So there we go. Now inside of that vacation folder, I've got two subfolders, one for each area that I shot at. I could then break that down even further if I want to. For example, I could go into the Yosemite folder, and I can now go in and create subfolders for each of the shoots inside of it. Now keep in mind, there's only a handful of images in here. I cut it down to make things quicker today, but normally I would have 20 or 30 images from each of these locations. So you'd have several hundred images in one folder. That's a lot to have to wade through to find individual shots. So by creating those subfolders and putting all of the images from a shot into it, it makes them easier to find. So we'll do the same thing. Let's go ahead and create some subfolders for the different places that I shot inside of Yosemite. I know these first few images are of Mount Dana, so we'll add a Mount Dana folder, and we'll just repeat that process. We grab the images that we want to move, and then we'll just drag them down into the Mount Dana folder. Same thing again. These top images are Bridal Veil Falls, so we'll add another folder for Bridal Veil Falls, and we'll select those, and we'll drag them into Bridal Veil. I'm just going to repeat this a couple times until we get this folder all organized. There's a few images of El Cap. Some classic tunnel view shots. There's some stars. If I could spell today. You can also create subfolders by right-clicking and using the contextual menu in the preview area. So if there's space, I could right-click and say, add a subfolder here. We'll do one for Olmsted Point. We'll grab those. And then these last couple were shot at Tenaya Creek. On my newer camera, it actually keeps track of the GPS location. It makes it much easier to find these. I have to remember what they are on the older images. All right, there we go. So now we've organized all of our images from our vacation into folders and subfolders based on where I was shooting and what I was shooting pictures of. Makes it much easier to go back and find things in the future because all I have to do is just look at the folder names. I don't have to try to go do a search to find those things. I can just flip through the folders. And once you have that logical folder structure, it works no matter where you keep track of your images. So it kind of future-proofs you. So if you were to switch to a different browser in the future, you don't have to worry about losing metadata and having a hard time finding those images. I'm going to take a look at our questions here real quick and see if there's any questions I can answer in here. Yep, it's now much easier to clean up your mess. So there's a question about, does it copy the picture into the subfolder or does it move the original? And it actually is up to you. The way I was doing it is I was actually moving them. I was moving them from the original folder into the subfolder. I didn't want to have copies around. Now, if I held down the Alt key or the Option key, it would make a copy. Or if I was working across volumes, so for example, when I was downloading from the memory card, that was one volume or one hard drive, think of it, and I was copying them to another hard drive. That's always going to be a copy. It's not going to be a move because that's a fragile process going from drive to drive. So I always want to make sure I keep the original safe by doing a copy. All right, so this is kind of the first step that I would do. I would download my images. I would go through and sort them out. I would do all of this before I ever take out my memory card, before I ever format it or get rid of the pictures on it. That way I've got everything backed up in two places. And then I also use a built-in backup system that will back up my computer all the time. And that's how I get a second backup of the images. Now, you can also do selective backups of your images, or you can copy them to another hard drive or even to an optical media. There's a lot of professional photographers that create lots and lots of images that'll actually burn a CD or a DVD for each job and put them in the client's file. And I think that's a great way to keep those safe as well. Or if you use an online backup service like Dropbox, it'll just automatically back them up to the cloud. That way you're always safe. All right, let me take a look and see if we have some questions here. There's a question, got to go to a meeting. Yep, the webinar is recorded. You can always watch it again later on our tutorial page or on our YouTube channel. There's a question about, can you move files from Aperture into browser? And you can export images from Aperture or from iPhoto to anywhere you want to be able to browse them inside of the browser. Now, Aperture and iPhoto are a little odd the way that they keep your images. They kind of suck them into their own hidden database, and then it's a versioning system. They make lots and lots of copies with very strange names. So it's not practical to navigate the Aperture or the iPhoto folder structure directly. You really have to export them out for it to work. And you can do that inside of either of those applications. When you export them, just make sure you use the export original option. If you export a JPEG, it'll export that without an embedded thumbnail, and then they're much slower to view. But if you export the original, you'll get the full raw data, and they'll be much faster to view in the browser. Let's see. One more question here. Is there a way to filter the type of files that I see in browser? Yes, you can. So this is not the best folders to look at, but there's a search field down here in the bottom right-hand corner. You could just type in the extension that you want to filter on. So for example, if you only wanted to see PSD files, you could just type in .psd, and it'll only show you just the PSD files in the folder that you're viewing. Unfortunately, the ones that we're looking at right now are all Canon RAW files, are all CR2s, so you won't really see much of a difference. All right, let's now go ahead and talk about how we can compare and pick out the best image within one of these folders to figure out which one we want to go shoot on. So let's go to the stars folder first, and we'll take a look. Now I have 3 different exposures that I shot of the night sky, and I'm just going to select all of these, and I'll go from the grid view into the detail view. And this will show me a large full screen version of the images. And I can now use my arrow keys to navigate through those to pick which one I want. And actually, none of those look particularly good, but let's say that the second one here is my favorite. So what I can do is I can use the slash key, the / key on my keyboard to remove items from my selection. Let me show you. So let me go back to grid view for a second. This is really handy when you have lots of similar images. You can select all of them, and I selected all of them by clicking and shift clicking to select the images that I want. We then go into that grid view, and then if it's an image I don't want, if it's one I don't care about, I'll just use the / to remove it. So this image I don't like, I hit the slash key. You notice how it automatically goes away and it goes to the next image. Then I can compare to the next one. I say, nope, I don't like that one either. I hit the slash key again, and it keeps throwing those out of the selection. So now when I go back to my grid view, I can just do that by hitting the G button on my keyboard or clicking the little icon here or hitting the escape key. You notice that only the image that I wanted is still selected. That way I can now go ahead and work on that image, or I could select the opposite two and get rid of them. Now, I tend to I'm not opposed to getting rid of images that I don't like right away. People are very religious on this topic. Some people like to keep every image they have ever shot, whether it's out of focus or not. I am a pretty brutal editor. I know what I like and what I don't like, and I just throw stuff away if I don't like it. So I know these other 2 images, one's out of focus, the other one I'm never going to use. So I'm just going to select those 2 images, hit the delete key, and I'm going to throw them away. I'm sure there's plenty of people that just gasped, oh my gosh, he just threw away images. It's okay. If they're not a good image, I'm not going to use it. What's the point in keeping it? All right, now you can also use this detail view to compare images zoomed in close. So I'm going to go to maybe this Bridal Veil Falls folder, and I've got 2 images, and I want to pick out which one I want to use. I'm just going to select those 2 images. And again, I'll go into detail view, and I can zoom in. So if I notice my cursor is now a magnifying tool, if I click, it's going to zoom into 100% on that file. And you notice a navigator appears, and I can use that navigator to move around my image. And if I hit the arrow key on my keyboard, it's going to go to the next image that I had selected, and it's going to be zoomed into that exact same spot. This is really handy if I'm using it to compare 2 similar images to each other. So there we go. So you can see I can toggle between those 2 images. It lets me look for which one is the sharpest. So for example, if this was a portrait and I had people in it, I could compare the eyes and I could pick out which one had the sharpest eyes. So it makes it really handy to compare the same spot in multiple images just by using those arrow keys on the keyboard, and it'll keep my zoom position between the 2. And the same keyboard shortcuts for delete and for deselecting work in both of these cases. All right, let's take a look at our questions here and see how we're doing. So this question, if you use Lightroom to manage your images, the functions that we're talking about in Browse today probably aren't going to be super important to you because you do a lot of that work there. Now, that said, the power of a browser is that it is super fast. You don't actually have to import these images in. If you've ever come back from a photo shoot and you've got 1,000 images and you put them into Lightroom, it can take minutes to catalog those images before you can actually do anything with them. A browser can be much faster. All it has to do is just extract the information very quickly. It doesn't actually have to catalog them. So you can go through, you can sort and cull and organize your images very quickly, and then just drag them onto the Lightroom icon. Lightroom will then catalog them, and you'll already have all of your sorting and organizing and culling done before it even gets cataloged into Lightroom. So it can be a lot faster. There's not a split screen compare mode yet, but that is something that we're working on for the future. There's actually quite a few things that we're working on for the future. And if you guys keep an eye on our labs website, labs.ononesoftware.com, you'll kind of be able to get some sneak peeks of some of the other improvements that we're working on for Browse for the future. All right, let me go back to our normal grid view here. And let's say I've gone through all of my folders in my vacation. So I've gone through the Mono Lake images and I've gone through all the Yosemite images and I've thrown out all the ones I don't want. They're now done. They're no longer should live in my inbox. I've done the work of sorting those. It's now time to move them down into their final resting place. So to do that, I can drag and drop the folders or I can copy and paste them. So these are all landscape images. So I go to my landscapes folder. I roll that down. These were all shot in California. And now I could just select the folders that I want. I can select more than one at a time. I'll select the Mono Lake folder and the Yosemite. Oops, I guess I thought I could select both at the same time. Guess I can't. Let's grab the Mono Lake folder and we'll drag that down into California. And I'll do the same thing with the Yosemite folder. I'll drag that down into California. And now I've filed those images away where they belong. And I can get rid of that initial vacation subfolder that I no longer need. Just like that. Let's go back down to those folders for just a moment. The drag and drop capabilities inside of the browser are the same as you'd experience anywhere else. I can drag and drop images from outside Browse into Browse to copy or move or look at them. And I can also drag images out. So if I wanted to attach an image to an email or use it into another application or even drag and drop it to Photoshop, it's just a matter of just dragging and dropping that images there. Let's take a look at other questions here. Is it possible to open an image in 8.5 from Capture One? Capture One is a tethered shooting application and raw processor. And in Capture One, you could set up the Perfect Photo Suite as an external editor. So inside of Capture One, you could select an image, right click, and say, send it to the Perfect Photo Suite. And you could work on it directly from there as well. Let me see if there were other things I wanted to show you guys in Browse today. Of course, when you're looking at images, you can zoom in and zoom out by using the thumbnail slider at the bottom, so you can make your thumbnails bigger or smaller. And you can change the sort and you can search within that folder as well. All right. I think that is about all I wanted to show you guys for Browse today. We do have a little bit of time left over. If I'm happy to answer questions folks have on Browse or any of the other modules of the Perfect Photo Suite. See, someone says, if you have a chance, can we see what's in your floral folder? Okay. If you're interested in floral photography, I actually have a webinar that I did not too long ago on that. So inside of floral photography, I kind of do the same thing. I just divide it up by the name of the flower, and then I just throw the images in there. So for example, here's some of the images that I used for a webinar a few weeks ago. You can also use the Tab key on your keyboard to hide the panels on the left and on the right so you can get a large view of your image, and you can always just use your arrow keys to navigate through those. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a slideshow control right inside of Browse as well. So it makes it fast to look through those. There's a question about using layers with Lightroom. You can certainly, from inside of Lightroom, select multiple images and then send them to Perfect Layers, which will create a new file and stack them together. I'll show you guys how to do that here in just a second. Let me just see if I have any other Browse questions before we leave Browse here. There's a question about not being able to see the questions. The questions, I'm the only one who gets to see the questions, and then I'll try to answer them for everybody when I can. Ratings and labels are coming soon to Browse. Let me just try to read some of these questions here. So So there's a question about raw conversions. It's not clear if you need to do your raw conversions before they go to browse or after. Uh, raw is really just another file format. The difference is when you go to work on a raw file, you always end up creating a copy of it, basically another file type. And you can use a raw file in the Perfect Photo Suite. And when you open it, you'll notice that it just tells you that you have to make a copy of it. So just a second here, I'll show you what it does. Let's go find a raw image. So like the ones we were just working on happen to all be raw files. So these happen to all be raw files. If I select one and I want to go work on it, let's say I'm going to send it to Perfect Enhance to do some brightness and color adjustments. When I click on it, you notice that the Edit Original option is just disabled because you can't actually edit a raw file directly. So we'll just select Edit a Copy. You can pick the format that you want it to be saved in. I always tend to like saving it as a Photoshop file, and I work in 16-bit and Adobe RGB, and I hit OK. It'll now build that Photoshop version of that raw file, sends it to Perfect Enhance. Let's do a little bit of work on it here. Let's go through and adjust the brightness and work on the color a little bit. I'm just going to use the gray dropper to fix up the color a little bit. That's a little warmer than I like. Maybe something about there. Increase the vibrance a little bit. Add a little bit more detail. And we'll put a little bit of a vignette on the edges. So there we go. Once I've done the work on my image and I'm happy with it, when I hit Save and Close, it's going to return us back to Browse, right where we were working. And right next to that raw image that we started with will be a Photoshop file that is the one that we just created. Takes a second to save that big file, and there we go. Now you notice there's the raw file and the PSD file that we created from it right there. Let me take a look at some more questions here. So the question was, how do you actually move your images? So if you use the Perfect Photo Suite for culling your images, how do you actually then get them into Lightroom? So here's what you can do. All you do is select the images that you want. You can actually even, pretty sure we can do this. We can just select the folder that we want to work on. So I can just take that California folder. Actually, let's go into the ones we just added. We just added this Mono Lake folder. I can just drag that folder and I can drag it right down to my Lightroom icon. Lightroom will open up. And you notice that Lightroom's import dialog will automatically detect all of the images in the folder that I just asked it to add. And then I can click the import button to import those into Lightroom. So it's just that easy. It's just a drag and drop operation. Now, one of the questions we had was, how do you work with layers through Lightroom? So this is off the browser topic, but just a second here. Let's wait for Lightroom to switch over to a different catalog with my demo images in it. There we are. And let's say I want to merge multiple images together. I'm actually going to create a little bit of a layout, and we'll use Lightroom and the suite to help me do that. I'm going to take these three images and I'll merge them together into a layout. So I'll just select the base image that I want to start with. Actually, we'll even do something even different. We'll do it even better than that. Let's start off here in the Perfect Photo Suite. I'm going to go to Layers to start, and I'm going to create a new canvas. You don't have to do this, but because I'm making a layout, I want to control the page size. So we'll come in here. I'll make a new page. Let's say it's 8.5 by 11. And I want to work in Adobe RGB in 16-bit. So there we go. It's created that new page for me. Oops, except I thought I had it going the other direction. Just toggle it to make it horizontal. So there we go. I have a new letter-sized canvas. Now I can go to Lightroom, where I'm keeping track of my images, select the image that I want to work with as my base image, and then I'll go to File, Plug in Extras, and send it to Perfect Layers. Now I'm going to use the Open as Layers in Perfect Layers option. Rather than creating a new document, it's going to allow me to merge it into an existing open document. So I'll just use that Open as a Layer. I'm going to click the Merge option, and it now inserts that image as its own layer into that new document. Now I'll just use the Transform tool to fill my canvas with that image. There we go. And now we can go back and we'll grab the next image that we want to work with in Lightroom. So we'll go back. I shot this texture at the same time. I want to use it as an overlay over the top of the image. I just repeat that same process. I go to Plug in Extras, and let's send that to Perfect Layers as a layer. It'll ask me that same question again. I'm going to say merge it in. Again, it puts it as its own layer on top. I'll size it by using the fill button. There's always little resize handles. I can drag it and position it where I want to. And then maybe we'll change the blending mode to blend that texture in. Let's use soft light's always a good one. And I can use the opacity slider to control how strong that texture is. There we go. That looks pretty cool. And then to finish this, let's add the headshot to it. We'll go back again to Lightroom, select the image. Just keep repeating that process as you want to send each image as a separate layer. This is great also for merging multiple exposures of the same image together. Now I'll just use the Transform tool to size and maybe rotate this a little bit to create the layout that I want. There we go, just like that. So that's how you can take multiple images from Lightroom or from Aperture or iPhoto or anywhere and use them to create a composite image inside of Perfect Layers. Now when I hit the Save button, it will save this as a layered PSD file that I can always go back in and edit and work on any of these layers independently. All right, let's go take a look at our questions again here. Question about, is the ratings metadata transferable to Aperture? It will be as soon as we add the ratings to Browse, coming very soon in the near future. It's a question from Debbie. I don't quite understand what your question is. It says, do you have them in subfolders also like side view, top view, etc.? You could. I'm assuming if this was like a commercial shoot and you had different angles of the same subject, you could break them down even more. It really just kind of depends on what's the maximum number of images you want to have in a folder that you can look at and be able to kind of grok it and understand them. So it depends on what it is. You know, if it's a time lapse, you could have hundreds of images in the same folder. It's all the same images shot over time. I can do the same thing with an HDR series. If I shoot a bracket of 7 or 9 shots for an HDR, I'll put that in a folder of its own, just so it's easy to keep track of just the images for that bracket. So the question about how you can actually compare images again. So I'm just going to click back on Browse for a second, and we'll show how to do that again. Here, let's go and take a look at to compare two images. So to compare multiple images together, just select the images that you're interested in, the ones that are similar to each other. So I select those two, and then I'm just going to switch from grid view to detail view. And you can do that down here with the icon on the bottom left, or you can use the keyboard shortcuts of E for detail view or G for grid view. So I'm just going to click on that button. Now, it only has just the two images that I had selected in detail view. So if I use the arrow keys right now on my keyboard, or I can use the arrows up here in the upper right hand corner, it's only just going to cycle through just those two images. So there's a lighter version, a darker version. You notice that it just circles back around to the first image. So it keeps me locked into just the images that I selected. I can then zoom in on those images if I want to compare a spot. And when I zoom in, it's going to always zoom into the same spot and same position on both of those images. And you can change that position by just dragging the image around, or you can use the navigator on the left to change the area that you want to look at as well. And then again, arrow keys will just toggle between those two images. And if I find the one I don't want, let's say the brighter exposure I don't want, I'll just hit that slash key to throw it out of my selection. So now I only have one image instead of two selected. And when I go back to the grid view, only the one image, the last image I was looking at, my hero shot, is the one that's selected. Albums and collections, again, are something that's coming soon. You can do that temporarily today just by creating a subfolder and holding down the Option or the Alt key and dragging images into that subfolder, and that'll make a copy of it instead. If you want to do a slideshow or kind of a pseudo slideshow, just close the left-hand drawer and go into detail view. So that left-hand drawer you can close just by dragging its divider to close it, or you can use the Tab key on your keyboard. It'll do the same thing. So I'm just going to open it back up, hit my Tab key. That'll hide it, and that gives you a much larger area to look at. And then if you double click on an image, you get a large view of it. And then as you arrow key through them, it's like a slideshow. Question about, do I ever use a different naming convention for your photos? To be honest, I tend not to. The camera name is kind of a unique serial number, and they're always within a folder based on what the subject matter is. So I don't really feel a need to go in and change the file names. I kind of like actually having it numbered by the camera because then I know they're pretty much always going to be unique. You'd have to shoot quite a bit before they're not unique number or name anymore. The times where I do change the name is when I do batch processing, and that goes through the batch processing module. I'll show you how that works here real fast. Let's just bring the drawer back on the left, and we'll go back to our grid view. And let's say I want to export out little JPEGs of these 4 images, and I want to give them to somebody else. And these names won't be useful to those other people. So I can just select the images that I want. I can right-click and select Batch. Then from the Batch dialog, you notice the source is automatically selected as the selected images. I can then use any module I want in between. Let me just delete perfect resize for a second. So there's always a source and there's always a destination, and in between you can insert as many modules in any order you want, so you can create your own workflows. If I just want to do something simple, I just want to make JPEGs that are 1,000 pixels, I'll just add perfect resize, and I can just use the image resizing section. I'll say I want to make the long side 1,000 pixels, and I'll put them at 72 pixels per inch for web viewing. And then down in the destination, I can pick where I want to put them. I'll put them on a folder on my desktop. So I'll just make a new folder. Let's call it batch. And I want to save those as JPEGs and sRGB. And now here, I can change what the name is. So rather than using the current name, I could change it to whatever I want. So we'll change it to text, and we'll call them Bridal Veil Falls. And then I'll click the plus button to add a number. So we'll add a serial number starting at 001. So now it's going to name those Bridal Veil Falls 1, 2, 3, 4. Put them in my folder called Batch on my desktop. They'll be resized by perfect resize to 1,000 pixels. And if I wanted to do anything else, like I wanted to add a border or add a watermark, those are all options I can do by adding any of the other modules from that module pop-up. I'll hit OK. It'll take those 4 raw images and size them down to little JPEGs for me. So while it's doing that, I'll go over here and take a look at some other questions here. Someone's having difficulty adding a NAS, that's a network area storage device, folder to sources. I wish I had some help for you on that. I can't think of any reason why that wouldn't work. We have those here in the office and we test with them, certainly. It could be, well, I'd contact tech support and see if they have any thoughts on that. It might be the protocol that's used. If it's a SMB, SMB can have some odd naming issues. Using a different protocol to communicate with a NAS might help. Looks like we're got all sorts of questions here. Question about my Fuji RAW files are displayed as blanks, but JPEGs are okay. It could be if it's a brand new Fuji file. There are cases where it's so new that it's not a supported file yet. And that's why they may be showing up as blank. If it's a really old one, those should all be supported. I have Fuji files that are like decade old and they show up and work fine, but it might just be one that's too new to show up. The other thing that can be helpful is if you work on a Mac, is to make sure you've downloaded the latest operating system and upgrades, because that's where the raw processing comes from on the Mac. And that can add support for new cameras just by updating the operating system. Question about will there be printing in the suite? I would say keep an eye on our labs website, and I think we'll have some interesting stuff to show you soon. So Armando wanted to see how to add images from the suite into Lightroom. So again, to do that, all you do is you just select the folder that you want. It could even be a folder structure. For example, if I come back and I select this Yosemite folder, if you remember, that has several subfolders inside of it, all you do is you just click and drag that folder to your Lightroom icon. Lightroom will automatically pick up that folder and all the subfolders in it, all the images in it, and allow you to catalog them. So that way, even though you've already gone through and done all of your sorting and organizing, you can then bring them in. Lightroom will even pick up the folder names that you've put them in as keywords for you automatically.